This meeting is being recorded.
My goodness, that was loud. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Be Well reading series, which is hosted by ELJ Editions. I'm Nicole Tallman, your host for this evening, and we are celebrating Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month with three amazing featured readers. This evening, we have Richard Blanco, Ana Maria Caballero, and Ariel Francisco. So just to give you a quick run of show, we're going to have each of our featured readers read for about 15 minutes each, and then we'll save a little bit of time at the end for audience Q&A. And if you'd like, you can go ahead and pop any questions that you might have into the chat, and we can save those for the end if questions come up while reading, or we can just take those questions completely at the end. So I am going to get started by reading Richard's bio. Richard was selected by President Obama as the 5th inaugural poet in U.S. history, and he is the first Latino immigrant and gay person to serve in such a role. Born in Madrid to Cuban exile parents and raised in Miami, the negotiation of cultural identity characterizes his 5, soon to be 6, collections of poetry. Right?
Yeah. No, actually, it's 5 with this.
Oh, wait, it is 5. Yeah. Homeland of My Body is the 5th. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Homeland of My Body, How to Love a Country, City of 100 Fires, which received the Agnes Starrett Poetry Prize from the University of Pittsburgh Press. Directions to the Beach of the Dead was the recipient of the Beyond Margins Award from Penn American Center, and Looking for the Gulf Motel, the recipient of the Patterson Poetry Prize and the Tom Gunn Award. And Richard is also a Woodrow Wilson Fellow and has received numerous honorary doctorates. And he's taught at Georgetown, American University, Wesleyan University, FIU, which is Florida International University. And he serves as the first education ambassador for the Academy of American Poets and the inaugural poet laureate for Miami-Dade County, which we are so excited to have Richard as our inaugural poet laureate. So welcome, Richard. The floor is yours. We look forward to hearing your poems.
All right, great. Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be reading from my new book, which is A New and Selected, and it's the on sale date is the 24th of this month. It's called Homeland of My Body. And obviously I'm going to read from the new poems and not the selected poems, but in a word, the book is about surrenders or attempts at surrendering, different kinds of things. One is the traditional notions of home, which has been part of the thread of all my work, understanding that perhaps homes have never been gained or lost, but they just exist, the sum of which exists in my as a one home in all my experiences. That home in a way lives in my body, hence the title. Also the surrendering of sort of the egoic self, of the insistence of finding home, the idea that one must live happily ever after, which is not at 55. The idea of surrendering to my art as perhaps the ultimate home. And also in a way surrendering to the sense of trauma or inherited trauma from my exile family, my exile community, which is much of my writing as well. So I think you'll see some threads of these things in some of these poems, I hope. So this first poem is basically, we could say it's when you've just had it. And it's about that kind of surrendering to your responsibilities and all these things you're supposed to be. Yeah. Why I needed to. Because I faithfully replied to every email from the absurd gods of urgency who punish my good deeds by leaving me empty when I empty my inbox. Because I praise hating myself, broken into my calendar's time-slotted tasks, slicing me thin, with the thick duty of being everything, yet nothing to anyone, not even me. Because I remember everyone's birthdays, but often forget my own and my mother's. Because she is bittersweet as the Cuban coffee she brews after Sunday dinners. Because she loves me only in the language of her cooking my favorite dish, carne con papas. Because of my bland father sunk in his armchair without me on his lap, because he never told me the life story I read only in the half moon of his eyes the morning he gazed into mine, then died. because my brother and I need to drink, to share our shared hurt at happy hour. So unhappily grateful for all of love's wonderful wreckage. Because my husband, who's still scared of his adoration for me as we embrace sleep, still doubts how long I'll nest my dreams in his arms, because I have never quite told him always. Because I'm just as afraid of needing him more than myself, because I'm not the one I've curated on Instagram, oh, so humbled by, oh, so grateful for, so many posed blessings with my posed selves. Because tonight I again remember I'm nothing more than a mirage, slowly disappearing on my porch, sitting with half the life I have left, still trying to piece how I fit into the puzzle of the constellations, because I've drunk their shots of light and too many martinis, because I'm cheering mindlessly to the moon, to my wish for immortality amid the clouds of my own cigarette smoke, because I should finally quit doubting my life will be more than these anonymous bones, because I need to believe in something else truer than me. That's why today I had to take myself away to the beach, because I needed to imagine my father as that father at the shore, handing a bouquet of seashells to his son, because I needed to taste that love can be as simple as a mother remembering to pack sodas and sandwiches, because I needed the seagulls tending the horizon to teach me again to be as still as them, to peer calmly into the void of the skies I face, because I needed to hear the waves break and break and break and break me into the lines of this poem, because I needed to burn, to see myself shine just as beautifully as the rosy glow of the sunlight bathing my closed eyes. This poem is called Self to Self. It's just a note to myself, basically. It's really interesting when these poems are so new. Like I literally just turned them in this late summer, and they're still speaking. Like I'm still learning from them. Like I'm still like I don't know how to talk about my babies yet too much. That comes with time. As I always say, my poems are smarter than me. But I just got really hung up on the contemplation between joy and happiness and what we're seeking in life. And so that's what this is. Self to self. What have you yearned for all your life, Richard? You who's aged in me. Do we know enough now to know that our answer isn't happiness? Not the sweet petals of some flower we've imagined should forever scent our heart. Not the nomad clouds we've tried to hold still in our eyes, long enough to see our soul eternally at home in them across a homeless sky. Not the face of the moon, a mime whose gestures of shadow and light have entertained our desire for immortal glory. Not the persistence of waves we've wanted to believe are as fated and willed as we've wished to be. Oh, Richard, have I been asking you the wrong question? Maybe it's not what we've yearned for, but what we've always lived on. Isn't our answer the joy of all the temporal moments that grace us? A bud just before it blooms or leans into its wilt, a cloud just before it's sighed from a wave's wisp and drifts into the destiny of wind. The dark moon, free of our eyes just before it ascends into the slavery of its sunlit cycles. Tides just before the purpose of ebb and flow. And Richard, just before we are Richard, just before the greed of our ego rises, needing to shine before we slip into yet another day. And I'll close with this one, which is, as opposed to having a bad day, it's about having a really good day. I don't know, we've probably all been possessed by those great, just really good days where your just heart is full of gratitude and you're just sort of satisfied with everything. and whatnot, and you're just ready to go, like, take me now. But it's not that simple, is it? So it's called A Good Day to Die. When there's nothing but a knowing, when you wake up to the stare of your dog's eyes like tiny brown suns shining with the truth of all you are before the alarm rings. When you lock your door, turn up the volume and dance barefoot, swaying alone with your eyes closed, your robe open to the world, and all you lust for is a song to hold your body. When you beam a good morning at the post office or great to see you at the market, meaning every word cut by your lips into little jewels that sparkle with syllables of kindness. When you toss your to-do list in the garbage, waste yourself in the lazy beauty of being witness to the gesture of an oak, a squirrel's dramatic pause, or the frenzy at the bird feeder. When you sit under the clouds for dinner, filled with gratitude for more than bread, and say grace for dusk's feast of savory hues and the dessert of sugary stars that indulge your soul. When you smile back at your smile floating in the fog of the bathroom mirror, your faint yet fulfilled eyes return the gaze of God within you, pleased with the honest life you've given yourself. When all that's left is a knowing that you don't need to know yet another home in some new city for the love of something other than you, blanketed in the peace of your worn bed, ready to die with all you are or aren't, all you've given or gotten, all you've believed or doubted, all you've done or haven't done, ready to kiss the moon's cheek goodbye forever. But the moon says, no, not yet. Thank you.
It's always a treat to hear you read, and especially to hear you read new work. Thank you so much for that, Richard. I really enjoyed hearing that. I'm gonna go to Ariel next. I don't know what happened to Anna. I've tried to reach out to her, but she's not answering. So we're gonna go to Ariel. Ariel Francisco is the author of Under Capitalism. If your head aches, they just yank off your head. A sinking ship is still a ship. All My Heroes Are Broke, which was named one of the 8 best Latino books of 2017 by Rigoberto Gonzalez, and Before Snowfall, After Rain. Born in the Bronx to Dominican and Guatemalan parents, he was raised in Miami and completed his MFA in poetry at Florida International University. And he also has an MFA in literary translation from Queens College. He was named one of 5 Florida writers to watch in 2019 by the Miami New Times and one of 6 Guatemalan authors you should know in 2021 by the Latino Book Review. And his work has appeared in the New Yorker podcast, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, the Rumpus, the New York City Ballet. How cool is that? Performance Today, and American Poetry Review, and elsewhere. And he's an assistant professor of poetry at Louisiana State University. Let's give Ariel a warm welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for coming out. And I love hearing those new poems, Richard. I'm super excited to get my hands on that book. I'm going to read some new poems for you guys as well. The first one from a book that I have forthcoming next year called All the Places We Love Have Been Left in Ruins. And then some other new poems that I'm not sure quite where they fit, but I figured I'd start with a Miami poem. I saw that Churchill's closed during the pandemic, and then apparently as a prank, somebody put a sign up that said a Chili's opening soon, and that was the most heartbreaking thing I had ever seen. So this is called Even Churchill's is Closing. Yes, named after a war criminal. Yes, his ugly mug adorned the entryway, but still we defied his baby-faced scowl with our dancing, our sweat misting the air, someone circling and stomping until they were vomiting in the bathroom that looked like it was cleaned maybe once every every presidential term, re-elections not included, watching the Jacuzzi Boys or Radio Boxer or some other flicker of light that carried us through yet another night of rum and cokes and the cheapest beer imaginable, keeping the rest of the world at bay by singing at the top of our young lungs until our voices ghosted us and our limbs wobbled like jello shots as we staggered into that incoherent darkness, bracing itself to be smothered by dawn, as we staggered out like wounded soldiers, arms around shoulders, holding each other up in the gravel that passes for a parking lot where the man in his reflective vest, who we paid $5 to watch our car from potential thieves, including him, salutes us with a smile bright as the rising sun. And this next one, this came out of a trip I took. I was lucky enough to spend last Christmas in Guatemala, where a lot of my family still lives, and I hadn't been there since I was a teenager. And we went to visit my grandparents' graves. And my aunts, they have a very peculiar sense of humor. And so while we were there, they asked me how I wanted to be buried, which is a strange thing, I think, to ask a young man. But this is called Visiting My Grandparents' Grave. My aunt asks how I'd like to be buried. 1. Al volcán. Throw me into the volcano, the one you can see from the roof of Abuela's old house, so that when it spews its ash into the air, you'll see me taking shape in the smoke slowly rising. 2. Al mar. Throw me into the sea. The Spanish words for waves and hello are homophones, hola and hola. In a country that meets both great oceans, greet me on either coast and watch me wave hello. And this next one, I was reading the poet Martina Spada, who's a favorite of mine, and he mentioned, just kind of casually, he mentioned Evel Knievel in a poem, and that's a name I hadn't heard in so long. And I got this immediate memory of watching Evel Knievel try to jump his motorcycle over the Grand Canyon. And I thought that can't be true. That's insane. And so I looked it up, and it was actually his son. And so that wasn't just a fever dream. I actually did see that happen. And so this is called Watching Robbie Knievel Jump the Grand Canyon, 1999. My mom's first birthday post-divorce, duplex in the sidewalkless outskirts of Orlando, one TV for the four of us, one bathroom for the four of us, two bedrooms for the four of us. The frogs who made a home of the window AC cheer the daredevil on. You can make a home anywhere, I guess. We watch Robbie Knievel rev his motorcycle to achieve what his father could not, a second-generation dream dressed all in white. We watch as he angels through the air, an inverse Icarus for a few seconds of flight, but a crash landing is still a landing, and a home is a home is a home. And this next one, my parents are they're very particular, and they believe in sometimes strange things. And so when I was a kid, I was like obsessed with space, and I grew up in the 90s. Like I love Star Wars and all that stuff. And my dad found that mysterious, and so he did his strange research, and he found out that I have the same birthday as Yuri Gagarin, who was the first man in space. And to my dad, that explained why I liked space. That just made sense to him. And my mom watches that show, Ancient Aliens. So this is called Seeing a UFO and Singing Frank Sinatra's Fly Me to the Moon into the Night Sky at the top of my lungs. How many poems does a guy have to write to get abducted by aliens? I know you see me, same as the fat moon peeping through the trees like a pervert. I just want to talk. My arms are sore from waving. My dad used to wonder why I was always so fascinated with space, then learned I share a birthday with Yuri Gagarin, and that explained everything. I would watch that shit show Ancient Aliens with my mom, and she would say, you know, in Guatemala, we remember where the Mayans came from, raising her eyebrows into orbit. How could I not grow up to search the skies for meaning? Ancient peoples thought objects soaring through the atmosphere were celestial serpents, their glowing tails slithering through space, and I buy it. Quetzalcoatl, is that you? I feel like the last kid sitting in front of the school waiting to be picked up. Don't say you've forgotten about me. And just two more. This next one, you know, I wrote a lot about like disliking how much time I spent in Miami, and then I left, and now I'm here in Louisiana, and Louisiana reminds me so much of Florida, and I ended up writing what is kind of like a love poem for Florida. And it's also the third poem I've written that references Scarface. So I guess no one can tell me that I actually hate Miami. And it does make reference to this guy who I guess was a scientist, this guy named Charles Morton, I think in the 1800s, who thought that birds flew to the moon for winter. So this is called Baton Blue, which is a play on Baton Rouge, which is where I was living at the time. Baton Blue. Winter's revelation is always the same. Longing. A flamingo flies overhead, a pink axe cutting through the sky. I think of Tony Montana alone in his hot tub, his world and everything in it on the cusp of collapse, watching a nature documentary, seeing the flamingos taking flight and yelling, "Fly, pelican." I think of Florida. I think of home. The haters will say the bird you see above is simply a spoonbill, but they're just trying to bring you down, man. I think of only seeing flamingos on lottery billboards, a good omen. I think of how Baton Rouge was once a part of West Florida. I think of how nothing escapes the swamp's reclamation. I think of Charles Morton, who thought birds flew to the moon for winter. We all have moons we long to return to. I watch the flamingo. I watch until it fades into the pink of sunset, until it becomes what is missing. And this will be the last poem I read for you guys. I think this is the newest one too. So I just want to thank you again for having me, and thank you again for coming out. I'm not sure how many of you all did this, but growing up in Florida when we were kids, my brother and I, we would catch lizards, and they get very upset when you catch them, and they kind of bare their teeth at you, and they'll clamp down on anything if you let them. And so we used to catch them, and then we would hold them up to like our ears and our lips and just kind of wear them around like that. I see some nodding heads. Okay, so I'm not a lunatic. So this is called Young Lizard Kings. Under the Florida sun's stern gaze, parents too busy fighting to watch us in the yard, my brother and I hunt for lizards in the loquat trees, brimming with many suns, chase them skittering across the porch or through the tall grass. If you pinch their tail, it snaps off and they shoot into the foliage like bottle rockets. You have to grab them by the middle with thumb and forefinger like a cigarette, their little mouths open in rage or fear, baring their tiny, harmless teeth at us. We raise them as though offering them to the sun before offering them our earlobes and lower lip, letting them clamp down in rage or fear and wear them as living jewelry, breathing green gems clinging to our skulls. We roam the neighborhood like this, little deformed Mayan deities, young lizard kings, our providence adorning our faces, seeking to remake this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel. I especially loved hearing you read that that poem from the New Yorker. I'd heard you read it, I think recorded, but it's the first time I've heard it live. It's such a beautiful poem, and I did not know that about lizards. I'm not from Florida, so I tried to wear them as jewelry, but that's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah, don't do that anymore.
I imagine not. So we had a few more people who joined us. Hi, Dustin and Maria Laura and Andrea. Thank you for being here. I don't think our third reader is going to show up, so I'm just going to go to Q&A. Do we have any questions for Richard or Ariel? You can ask craft questions or just, you know, anything at all. If you'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and raise your hand or pop it into the chat. If not, I'll just ask them questions because I always have questions for writers, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So if anyone else has something, I'll let you go first. No? Well, I know, Richard, you have this new book coming out. You want to talk a little bit more about your new book?
Well, as I was saying, for those of you that weren't in the room earlier, it's well, I'll say something different. So writing through a pandemic, I just thought the pandemic wasn't really affecting me. I just thought, you know, I'd get that question all the time. How has the pandemic affected your writing? Gee, I don't know. I'm sitting here by myself writing like I've done for 30 years. Like, and I don't want to see anybody anyway, so because I'm writing. But that and turning middle age, and I think so, subconsciously that I was, we're all terrified of death, basically. But I started, as I looked back, the poems I was writing became a lot about mortality, but also not just physical mortality, not just one's own mortality, but just the dying away of things, like stuff I don't want to carry with me anymore, stuff I just want to surrender. And also became, some of the poems became really small, like really focused on, like, I remember I cut my palm, and there's a poem called just about watching my palm heal and the miracle of the body, and stuff. So anyway, but I got very corporal, I guess. And the new book is called Homeland of My Body, and it's thinking about home in different ways that I haven't thought about before. In some ways, thinking that it's all in me. Every home I've had, or will have, or just exist in the sum total of my body. It's homeland of my body. But also there's the sense of, well, anyway, that's it in a gist. Like I said earlier, they're kind of like, they're still like newborn children, and I'm still getting used to talking about them. I'm like, I don't know, what are you? Like, what will you grow up to be? Now that I've let you go into college or something, right? But yeah, I'm very excited. It's a new selected, and that's always thrilling. That was a brand new experience, to see your whole retrospective of your work. And it kind of has a neat structure. So we split the new poems into two halves, and it bookends the selected poems from the previous collection. So it's kind of like it's like, where am I now? Then it flashback, sort of like watching a flashback movie, and then it brings you back to the present again. So didn't plan that, it just kind of happens that way as usual. But yeah.
Well, I popped a link there to Richard's new book in the chat. It's available for pre-order. If you haven't already pre-ordered it, you can do so there. And Ariel, you mentioned you're working on something new too, I think. You want to tell us what you're working on?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm always working on a million things, but I have a new, I guess my fourth book will be out next year, which is kind of like an epilogue to A Sinking Ship Is Still a Ship. It's kind of returning to Miami, Florida, in this kind of climate change space. It's called All the Places We Love Have Been Left in Ruins, and it's primarily this long poem I wrote. It's on the Academy of American Poets, called Insomniami, which is this kind of long poem in fragments that makes up most of it. But a few other poems as well, which I'm excited about. That Churchill's poem is in it. Also, now I feel bad. I wrote this poem ripping into Jimmy Buffett because Hollywood Beach that's where we used to skip school. That was like my favorite place in the world as a teenager, and they built that hideous Margaritaville there. So I wrote this while he was still alive. I wrote this poem just kind of like being very mean in a jokey kind of way, but now I feel like I have to amend it or put like R.I.P. Jimmy Buffett on it or something. But I have a couple of translation projects as well, coming out later this year and next year as well. Particularly this, a guy named Jacques Vieux, who was a Haitian poet, but he grew up in the Dominican Republic, so he wrote in Spanish. And he was killed very young. I think he was just 23 during the Dominican Revolution in 1965. And that was my thesis at Queens College, and I've been working on that for quite a bit. So I'm really excited for that to come out. And I think I finally found a publisher for my dad's book of poems, which I'm very excited about too. But hopefully I'll have some news for that soon.
I was trying to find a link here to the book you just mentioned. It's not available for pre-order yet, is it, Ariel?
No, not yet. I'm still I'm waiting on the cover art. I got my buddy working on it. But I've known him for a long time, so I know I got to stay on top of him to get it done. But hopefully soon. Yeah.
I just wanted to plug it for you, but that's okay. We'll plug Under Capitalism instead. Here, we got that from Flower Song. Here we go. So yeah, I have this book. I love this book. It's so cool. So if you don't have it, you should definitely order it. Here's a link. And we have a question from Lynn. She wants to know if you have a theater background, Richard.
No, I don't. You must be asking in reference to the play that's gonna debut in Miami, November 10th, Sweet Goats and Blueberry Senoritas. So how did that happen? I guess I have like a really poor reader because we didn't have books in my house. The only books we had were books on how to learn English for my parents. So, and finally we got to say encyclopedias. That's what I grew up reading. And so I was a poor reader in terms of novels or like big books. And I think that's partly why I like the short form of poetry. But I also used to read plays because I do my book reports on plays because I could get through 80 pages. So you never know where life ends up. So when I got commissioned to write a play, I was like, yeah, who can't write 80 pages? You know, oh my God, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. It's like taking a poet and blindfolding them and tying their hands behind their back and telling them to write. And you're like, what? Like, so it's all, it's all dialogue and nuance and inference. And it's so collaborative. Like I've never had to deal with like, it's, at best your first sort of script is a good blueprint of what the play is going to look like 3 years after. And in the interim of all that, I hooked up with Vanessa Garcia, who was obviously more than a seasoned playwright. So I had the concept down, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I had tried a draft, and so she was great, and I'm great to work with. And yeah, it premiered in Portland, Maine. And I'm so glad it's coming to Miami. It is called, like I said, Blueberry Goats and I'm sorry, Sweet Goats and Blueberry Senoritas. And the basic premise is there's the main character. It's a little bit of an ensemble piece, but the main character is moved to Maine for love, finds herself divorced, and owns a bakery where she has to sort of make a decision of what to do with her life next. In the middle of that, contemplating the family, well, not the sort of family she's adopted in a sense in the community in Maine, and also her Miami roots and her mother, with whom she is estranged. So all that.
You could do a follow-up called Blueberry Goats, Richard. Not There's a poem in there somewhere.
Blueberry
Goats is a great title.
Sweet Goats was, but Blueberry Goats is even funnier.
Lynn, were you asking because of that, or were you just curious? I'll tell you, Richard, you're also when you read, it seems like you do have a theater background as well.
Oh, I totally misunderstood the question. No, I'm just I don't know. I've grown to love the performance of poetry more and more, and invested more of myself in. And these are still kind of new. Like I said, I don't really know how to read them too well yet. But yeah, over the years, I've just realized it's just another part of the craft that you just you never get taught. You kind of have to learn on the fly, like just by doing it. It's like almost like singing a song over and over again till it lives in your body. So yeah, and I've had a lot of practice for over the last few years. So, but yeah, well then I got to plug the play anyway. So thank you. I've secretly always wanted to take an acting class, but I can't add anything else to my resume right now.
Well, it's Anna just messaged me that was trying to get in and she couldn't. So I just sent her the Zoom link. Maybe she'll be able to drop in and read a few poems. In the meantime, Ariel, do you have a theater background? Because you always
no.
I would have
yeah, no, I was just so terrified. I remember when I took my first poetry workshop ever with Denise Duhamel, and she told us, I think I was like 19, and she told us we had to read our poems out loud to the class, and I almost like jumped out of the window. Like I always hated presenting and kind of reading in front of people. So that came from like practicing just so I could do it like in front of my classmates and not be embarrassed. But over the years, it's it's become a bit better, I guess. But yeah, no, even still, the idea of being on a stage is still very terrifying to me.
Yeah, I can get that. Anna, welcome. It's so good to have you. I'm sorry you couldn't get in. Richard was having difficulty with the Eventbrite as well. So in the future, I'll just have to make sure that you all get the Zoom instead of the Eventbrite. And I know you're like 6 hours ahead of us. So thank you for thank you for joining.
Yes. I stayed up till 1 a.m. and I was like frantically trying to get in and like going to all like your Facebooks. And I'm so sorry. Hello, everybody. I'm so sorry. I couldn't get in through the Eventbrite. I couldn't.
Well, noted for the future. Everyone will get a Zoom link who's reading, so we don't have that problem again. Are you up for reading a few poems for us, Anna?
I would love to. Give me 1 second. Let me I had kind of given up, and then finally I got your text, because also my phone has been funny since I'm abroad. But I'm so happy that I did.
I'll read your bio while you're looking for your poems. How's that? Okay.
Yes, and I'm ready. I'm actually ready. So yes.
Okay. Well, Ana Maria Caballero's work explores how biology delimits societal and cultural rights, ripping the veil off romanticized motherhood and questioning notions that package sacrifice as a virtue. She's the recipient of the Beverly International Prize, Colombia's Jose Manuel Arango National Poetry Prize, and the Steel Toe Books Poetry Prize, and a Sevens Foundation grant. She has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and the Best of the Net. She's the first artist to sell a poem at live auction in Spain, and her digital poems have been released by Diario ABC, Timepieces, and Playboy. And she's recognized as a Web3 poetry pioneer, and her work has been covered by major media outlets, and she regularly speaks at leading global events. She's the author of 5 books, and she has a 6th that's forthcoming in 2024. And she's the co-founder of the digital poetry gallery, The Verse. Anna, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Nicole, and thank you to everyone who's listening. It's really, really great to be here. I'm going to read a few poems from my book Mammal, which will be coming out next year. I'll begin with Mujeres. My toddler daughter and grandmother like to doze off together to the sound of TV after lunch. Just look at them napping on the tarmac gray couch. Nina in her yellow Journey t-shirt and whimsy printed panties, face down, occupying space like dropped cutlery. Estelita guards her posture. You'd hardly suspect she snores, though she does. Elbows curled about her, positioned in the corner like a minor museum artifact, the kind none would bother to recatalog. I watch them from the kitchen counter while I sip soup and answer emails with a wrung spine. Yes, okay, but first, the movie playing on TV, La Isla de las Mujeres, a 1953 black and white Mexican film Estelita found on Univision. The movie's unreal world is governed by women. Men are forced to pound clothes clean, soothe bellowing babies, pulverize thick shelled spices via muscle and mortar. Naturally, they, the men, rebel. 3 out of 4 generations of my family's women occupy the realm of my kitchen. Estelita, 90-something of her years, no one is certain, left an alcoholic husband in Colombia to raise 6 children alone in South Florida. My mother, nearly 70, tends to my father, whose mind was swallowed by a drunken slip. And I, 40, winching 2 companies from the abyss of my brother's avarice. I cannot recall Nina as a baby, I tell you, cannot. I rise to turn the TV off, but don't. Instead, I take my place between the resting bodies and watch the men revolt. I read another poem from this book. This one is called Beholden. Even though I am not funny, my son laughs. His laughter doesn't make me feel funny, but beholden, like I owe him a joke now, like I better get funny soon, before he is old enough to remark, Mommy is not funny, but somber. A string pulled from its spool into a snap horizon. You need not drop your gaze. If it becomes hard to see me, I will be the first to say, turn away. I'll read a few more and then pass the mic on. I'll read this poem. This poem is special because it was published in the South Dakota Review, and I also collaborated on an artwork with it, with an artist called Nancy Baker Cahill, who is just released a beautiful sculpture at the Whitney Museum. I really recommend everyone go and see it. This poem is called "If Female, the Body Prepares for the Possibility of Child, builds walls of sustenance, cushions of clay, quiet as grotto, awaits insemination, conceivable fertilization, the shuffle of nucleic matter we sort as epithet, discreet, thick, slight, brave. Though we absorb them as custom, as culture, the syndromes of our organs' labors result not from endeavor, but from fact. Blood runs down the inner thigh of a grown girl. Once I spot red, I can claim I've lived enough, seen enough to come of age. To walk as ladder lady, little woman, ripened daughter. My girl mind, my girl soul, lime green mangoes, fallen, ovular in their form. Thank you. Do we have more time? Should I read a few more, or 1 or 2, or how are we doing?
Go ahead. You can read 2 more.
All right, I'll read a poem right now called Waiting Room. 26 weeks ago, you entered my belly as an invisible coin. Now I bump into walls with your bulge, spill soup on you, prop my elbows across your arched loins. Nina, our space is this. This one evening is minute in a moonlit room. I invite you to take over as you do. Exhaust me as you do. 4 more weeks, child, to crowd my organs flat. To know absolute privacy. To witness the secret of my swollen eye. To collect my voice with the web of your hands. tú, yo, tuyo. Only once will I allow you to see this, Nina. This one collapse by the cage of your crib. Is my shaking waking you? Don't think it common. It is just the waiting that does this. Not for you. No, I wait for me. For the mother in me to take care of me. To birth me and bathe me and put me to sleep. Here in your room, where the moon primes my womb, so I may rise to receive you, reliable as a worn wooden spoon. And I'll read one last short one. Thank you all for listening. This one is called Bad and Wolfing. The problem of it is the bullshit. Bad behavior brings consequence, I warn them. No TV, no candy. Yet here I am, bad and wolfing. I am serious. I will count to 3. My vehemence awful as the truth of awfulness. May my children chew with closed jaws, give thanks, quit throwing mulch at the park. Beyond that, what? Above is my mother, her airs toward me eolic, at times a gust, at others a squall. Oh, but doth each visit blow? Below is my daughter, between us, me, and my erroneous storms of constancy. We reveal each other, a play within a play, a cloud within a lake. If I was Italian, I would utter circolo. No exit from the cycle that traps us like wet weather. I will not prevent the tempest by forcing my daughter to wear a sweater. Still, I make her. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Anna. I was going to drop a link to your latest book here. I mean, I have a Petite Mal here. Your new poetry book is ready for pre-order or not yet?
It's not yet that close, but soon. But a Petite Mal is available.
All right, I'm going to put the link here for that one. This is an amazing book. I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Anna recently for the Blue Mountain Review, and she and I got to talk about her latest book, which is technically categorized, I have it here, as it's kind of like it's memoir, it says, but it's written in a way that felt to me like poetry. So it's always a pleasure to have you, Anna, and thank you again for joining us, and I'm sorry about the Zoom issues there.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I made it on finally. Again, apologies, Nicole. I really love joining all that you organize. You're wonderful.
I appreciate that. I think we have one more question coming from the audience. Andrea asked Ariel, when you wrote Insomnia, I can't even say it, Insomniami, did you know it would one day turn into a longer poem / book?
No, it was a weird. I think it was actually like my original Twitter handle back in like 2014. It was just like that combination of words just kind of stuck in my head. And I've written so many different versions of it, and they were all terrible. And then I started to cobble together. It really came out of all the scraps that didn't make it into A Sinking Ship Is Still a Ship, where I had all of these, either an image or a metaphor, but I couldn't turn it into a poem that felt good. And so I just kind of scraped all of those fragments together, and I had just this weird fragmented poem that just kind of kept getting longer and longer. And I never really sent it anywhere until I sent it to that Academy of American Poets. They have the Treehouse Climate Action Prize, which is for poems about climate change. And I was like, well, you know, I don't think it's good, and I've never sent it anywhere. Let me send it to this, and it ended up winning. And I was like, oh, maybe now I can try to make it something. So I was trying very hard at a certain point to make it into a book-length poem just in and of itself. And I thought about doing it as a chapbook, but it ended up being, I ended up putting all the fragments on an individual page, which is something I've never done before. So some of the pages are just like one line. Some of them are just like a couple lines, which felt like cheating at first, but I kind of got over that. So it ends up now being like 30 something pages. And then I had to close the door on it at one point, because a poem like that, you can just kind of keep adding and stuffing more stuff in there. But it was it's probably, I guess, the longest. It took me the longest to write it, just because I've been working on it in different ways for so long. Like at a certain point, that was the title of A Sinking Ship Is Still a Ship also. And I just kept trying to, I don't know, I just had that what do you call it when you jam two words together? A portmanteau, I think, right? Or something like that. I just had that stuck in my head for so long. I was like, I got to figure out a way to utilize this. And luckily it ended up being this weird poem, at least for me, weird, because I've never written anything like that, just like this very tiny, fragmented sort of amorphic kind of poem. But it ended up working. So yeah, I don't know what I thought initially, but at a certain point I was like, let's see how long we can extend this and see how much life I can give it. Yeah.
That was a really good question. Thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So if no one has anything, I think I can let everyone go. But before I do, I just want to remind people that the series usually takes place the first Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern. For November, we're actually going to move to Friday, November the 3rd, because one of our readers had a scheduling conflict, and it's going to be cool. It's going to be a celebration of horror poetry. And it's going to be Jessica Coelho with Adam O. Davis and Dorothea Lasky. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in reading some or listening to some kind of spooky stuff. It should be pretty fun. And I will be downloading this from the cloud and posting it online, so you can rewatch it or, you know, share it with your friends and family. And I want to thank you all again for being here and spending this almost an hour with us in celebration of Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. And thank you again, Richard, Ariel, and Anna, for joining and reading us your beautiful work. It's such a pleasure to have poets like you among us. And I wish everyone a great night. Take care, everybody. Be well. Thank you.